I used to believe that people envied my life, not because of wealth or extravagance, but because I had something far more elusive, something most people spend their entire lives searching for. I had a stable marriage, a home filled with laughter, and a best friend I could always rely on. For 5 years, Olivia and I built our life together, one carefully placed brick at a time. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. We had our ups and downs like any other couple. But I never imagined that the downs could be enough to break us. I still remember the way she looked at me in the beginning, as if I were the very center of her universe. We worked tirelessly to create something meaningful. Sleepless nights spent chasing dreams, mornings filled with quiet moments of warmth. My job kept me busy, but I always made sure Olivia never felt alone. Fridays were sacred, our ritual of Chinese takeout, and movies never missed. She loved romantic comedies, even though I could barely sit through them. Still, I watched them anyway, letting her rest her head against my chest, feeling the quiet rhythm of her breathing as the screen flickered before us. And then there was Daniel, my best friend since college, the one person outside my marriage I trusted without hesitation. We had bonded over endless study sessions, united in our shared frustration with calculus during our first year. Through breakups, career struggles, and every twist life threw our way, we remained constant. He stood beside me on my wedding day as my best man, raising a toast to the incredible woman I had found. Back then, I believed him. I truly thought I was the luckiest man in the world. At first, Olivia and Daniel had little to do with each other beyond their connection through me. They had known each other for years, got along well, maybe too well. I even joked about it sometimes, laughing at the idea that they had their own little friendship. It never bothered me. If anything, I was grateful. It felt good knowing that the two people I cared about most also cared about each other. But then, things began to shift. Olivia started to withdraw, in ways so subtle I could barely put my finger on them at first. Our conversations grew shorter. Her laughter became less frequent. At night, when I reached for her, she would turn away, murmuring that she was tired. The phone that used to rest on her bedside table now always lay face down, notifications silenced. I noticed, of course I did, but I told myself it was nothing. Every marriage goes through phases, right? And yet, Daniel changed too. He began canceling our weekend basketball games, brushing off our plans with vague excuses about being busy. When we did see each other, he felt different, distant, uneasy. He avoided my eyes, cut our conversations short. I should have questioned it. I should have pressed harder. But I was blind, naive. I trusted them both too much, believed in them so deeply that I ignored the signs screaming at me from every direction. So when Olivia started coming home late, night after night, slipping through the door well past midnight, I told myself she was just working late. That's all it was. Just work. But deep down, I think I already knew the truth. Even when Olivia came home reeking of someone else's cologne, I still clung to my imagination, weaving explanations that spared me from the unbearable truth. I told myself I was overthinking it, that the long nights and sudden distance were just part of the ebb and flow of marriage. But deep down, I knew. I knew as I sat alone in the dark, my phone resting in my palm, waiting for a message that never came. And then one night, the front door creaked open. I turned my head toward the sound, my pulse hammering in my ears. Olivia stepped inside, her lips slightly swollen, her hair tousled in a way that didn't belong to the wind. She froze the moment she saw me, her eyes widening, then narrowing, calculating. "Oh," she murmured, as if my presence was an inconvenience, as if she hadn't expected me to still be awake. A beat of silence. Then, recovering quickly, she forced a casual tone. Work had run late. She'd left her phone at the office. The words rolled off her tongue too smoothly, too effortlessly, like a script rehearsed a dozen times before stepping onto the stage. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But something in her voice, in the way her fingers twitched at her side, made the air in the room feel suffocating. If I had known then what I know now, I would have asked for the truth that very night. I would have demanded it. But instead, I let her walk past me, let her slip into bed without another word. I chose the lie, the fragile, desperate hope that the woman I had built my world around wouldn't shatter it in return. I sat on the couch for hours, staring blankly at the television, though I wasn't watching it. My mind split into warring halves. One screaming the truth I refused to hear, the other whispering soothing lies, telling me I was exhausted, imagining things, overreacting. But when I finally turned off the television and climbed the stairs, the silence of our bedroom confirmed what I already feared. Olivia lay on her side, her breathing steady, but I knew she wasn't asleep. I perched on the edge of the bed, reaching out hesitantly, my fingers brushing her shoulder. She flinched, a small, involuntary movement, but it was enough. Something inside me cracked. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed heavily before rolling onto her back, her face unreadable. "What is there to talk about?" she said flatly. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Are you seeing someone else?" Silence. And in that silence, I had my answer. My breath came in short, uneven bursts. My hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. "How long?" I whispered. She hesitated, then finally met my gaze. A year. My best friend, my wife. For an entire year, they had laughed with me, shared meals with me, looked me in the eyes and lied. I had called Daniel my brother. I had welcomed him into my home without hesitation, without suspicion. A strangled sound escaped me, something between a laugh and a sob. I had been such a fool. I stood abruptly, my voice hollow. "I want you out." A flicker of something, regret, perhaps, crossed her face, but she masked it quickly. Then, as if my words meant nothing, she spoke again. "It's necessary," she said. "Daniel and we're moving in together." The air left my lungs in a violent rush. She smoothed out the fabric of her dress, her voice unbearably calm, as if she were discussing a simple change in weekend plans. Then she delivered the final blow. "We're expecting a baby?" The room tilted. My stomach twisted. I staggered backward, feeling my legs threaten to give out beneath me. A child, their child. She reached for me, maybe out of some misguided attempt at consolation, but I recoiled as if her touch would burn. "Get out," I said, my voice trembling. She hesitated, then nodded, and just like that, she was gone. I stood motionless, staring at the empty space where she had been only moments before, her words still echoing in my mind. My best friend, my wife, a child that wasn't mine. The weight of it pressed down on me, crushing, suffocating. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails left crescent-shaped imprints in my palms. This wasn't a nightmare. I couldn't wake up from it. As the sound of her car faded into the night, I sank onto the couch, staring at the wall, the minutes bleeding into hours. My phone vibrated. For a brief, pathetic second, I hoped that Olivia was calling to say it was all a mistake. But it wasn't her. And in that moment, I finally understood. I had lost everything. But losing everything has a way of reshaping a man. The pain becomes fuel, the betrayal a catalyst. And as Daniel and Olivia built their new life together, unaware of the storm brewing beneath their feet, I began to rebuild myself. Not from the pieces they had left behind, but from something stronger, something sharper. Daniel changed first. It started with small things, frantic movements, exhaustion seeping into his bones, stress carved deep into the hollows of his face. I watched carefully, recognizing the cracks before they even formed. Every mistake he made, I ensured he felt it. He had taken everything from me, and I would make certain he understood what it was like to lose. Olivia had no idea what it was like to watch the life she had built crumble beneath her. Not yet, but soon she would. Sophia and I met in a sleek restaurant downtown, the kind of place where power deals were whispered over martinis. She smirked as I approached, the soft glow of the chandeliers glinting off the rim of her glass. "You've been watching him?" she asked, stirring her drink. I nodded. "Good," she said. Now we speed things up. She had noticed what I had, the unraveling, the way Daniel was slipping. Liquor had become his crutch, his escape. I cocked an eyebrow as she smiled. "You have Hargrove wrapped around your finger now, don't you? Mr. Hargrove, my boss, my mentor, and now, my most valuable weapon." His company held some of the largest investments in the city, and Daniel's business was nothing more than a flickering candle in the hurricane I was about to unleash. The meeting with Hargrove was effortless. "You've been keeping an eye on Whitmore Capital?" I asked, the city stretching out beyond his office windows in a glittering sprawl. Hargrove leaned back, arms crossed. "It's been struggling, hasn't it?" I nodded. "More than they're admitting. Investors are getting nervous." He studied me for a long moment. "And how do you know this?" I leaned in slightly, my voice steady. "Let's just say I have sources." He exhaled, then nodded. "If you're right, now might be the perfect time to pull any potential partnerships." I took a slow sip of my coffee, masking my satisfaction. In a single conversation, I had planted the seed. By the time it bloomed, Daniel's business would suffer a blow so devastating. He would never recover. And the best part? He would never even see it coming. A week later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance, Daniel had lost another key investor. His company was officially drowning. I imagined him sitting at his desk, staring at numbers that refused to align, his world unraveling just as he had unraveled mine. But it wasn't enough. I wanted him to lose more. So I kept going. And as the first doubts crept into Olivia's mind, I made sure she saw me, just once, in a little cafe she often visited. She thought it was coincidence. It wasn't. She was beginning to regret her choices. And that was just the beginning.